Welcome to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey, a podcast to encourage, educate, and equip you to care for children and youth through adoption, foster, and kinship care. Hosted by an adoptive mom with over 22 years of kinship and adoptive parenting experience. She's on this journey with you. Please welcome Sandra Flack.
You keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on you, because he trusts in you. That is Isaiah chapter 26, verse 3. I'm Sandra Flack, your host. Welcome to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey. I'm grateful you are here, where you will find some encouragement and find a community for your parenting journey. I have another great dad guest with us today. But first, because I always want to encourage and equip you, and because so many of us are raising kids, all of us are raising kids who've experienced some level of trauma, right? But so many of us are raising kids who were prenatally exposed to alcohol or other drugs. We have some excellent resources for your parenting journey specifically, starting with this.
Sandra Flack, host of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, and FASD educator Debbie Raymond, invite you to join Hope for the FASD Journey, a virtual support community for parents and caregivers raising individuals with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, diagnosed or not. This faith-based support community meets online 3 times each month, features special VIP guests, and a private Facebook group for members only, which includes Soul Care Saturday video devotionals led by Sandra and Deb. Both Sandra and Deb are adoptive moms raising kids with FASD and facilitators of the Facets neurobehavioral model. For details and to register, visit justicefororphansny.org/hope-community. That's justicefororphansny.org/hope-community.
So 1 in 20 school-age children in the United States has been prenatally exposed to alcohol. And it's upwards of 80% of children in foster and adoptive placements have an FASD, fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. Most are either not diagnosed or they're misdiagnosed with a whole bunch of other things, which are really symptoms of FASD. Either way, so many of us are struggling, right? And I'm a mom of 2 young adult sons, 18 and 20. Both were diagnosed with fetal alcohol syndrome when they were little. I know how isolating this journey can be. I know how difficult it can be, and that's why I want to offer the resources that we have to help you. So in addition to the support community that you just heard about, and which is, I have to say, the highlight of my week, on the 3 weeks out of the month that we offer the online meetings, just the community that we have and the support that we are to one another. It's like my favorite group of people. So I hope you'll check that out. But also, I offer one-on-one coaching for parents, caregivers, on FASD and just exploring the symptoms that your kiddos may be exhibiting, and using the neurobehavioral model, the Facets neurobehavioral model that I'm trained in, really kind of exploring what accommodations, what supports, what's going to work best for your kiddo. So we get to do that one-on-one online, offer that, as well as online and in-person workshops. So every month I offer an online workshop, a couple of online workshops typically. So coming up right around the corner in July, on Wednesday, July 10th at 10 a.m. Eastern, I'm offering a free, I call it a lunch and learn, because we have it at, I guess it would be breakfast and learn, I guess, if it's 10 a.m., but it's an intro to FASD. So it's a 1-hour workshop where we explore all of the symptoms and some strategies as well. It's interactive. There's Q&A. So I teach that. That's 1 hour. And it's a great intro for parents who are just learning about this, or anybody in your kiddo's life who you think should learn about this. And also, if you want to go a little bit deeper than just that 1 hour intro, I have a 3 hour. So we go a little bit deeper than that 1 hour. It's a 3 hour workshop using the neurobehavioral model as well. That one is coming up on Wednesday, July 24th at 10 a.m. Eastern. I'm always kind of mixing up the days and times just to try to accommodate everybody. If you've been hearing about these workshops and you're like, I really would like one of these, but it's never on a day or time that works with my schedule, hey, email me. I would love to hear from you, number one. And number two, I would accommodate your schedule and offer some of the trainings at times that work best for you, because I'm just sort of a lot of times guessing what a good time is or going by my own schedule. So let me know. You can email me directly, Sandra Flack at justicefororphansny.org, and I answer my own emails and I'll get back to you, and we'll schedule something that works best for you. And coming up in October, I am offering our biggest, most intensive workshop on FASD using the Facets Neurobehavioral Model. It is 6 3-hour sessions. So we meet once a week online for 3 hours, and it's 18 hours worth of content. It's the deepest that we go. And so if you want to check that out, it's on our website as well. In that schedule to begin in October. So to register for any of these workshops, the coaching, or even the support group, you go to our website, justicefororphansny.org, and then you click on the training tab at the top of the page, and FASD is in the drop-down button. You click the FASD button and it takes you to the page where all of these resources live. You have to scroll down through. I think the support group is at the very bottom. So keep scrolling through and reading. And then there's a button for the support group where you would go to register for that, for example. So check it all out on our website. So also, please subscribe or follow this podcast, excuse me, wherever you listen, whatever your favorite platform is. And we're also on YouTube. So if you like to watch your podcast, you can see what my hair is doing on any particular day. Today, you would notice the background behind me is quite different because I am up in the beautiful Adirondacks, which is a camp that we frequent. So I'm up here and recording and coming to you from the mountains, actually. So if you want to watch your podcasts, we have a YouTube channel. It's the Justice for Orphans YouTube channel. So you'd have to go to the Justice for Orphans page. All of our podcast episodes are now also there in the video form. But wherever you watch or however you watch or listen, please follow or subscribe. If you listen through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. When you do that, it helps other people who are looking for a podcast about adoption, about foster care, about FASD. It lets the algorithm know the more subscribers, the more reviews. It's important. It brings us up in that search list a little bit higher so that families who really need to find us can find us. So you're helping another family, actually, when you subscribe and when you leave a review. So enough about all of that, because we know you're telling your friends about us anyway. Let your fellow fostering and adoptive friends know so that they can be encouraged and equipped too. So now to our guest. Like I said, we have another dad guest with us this week. Adam Southerland is the missions and ministry pastor at New Hope Community Church in Queensbury, New York. I have been to this church. Remarkable. They have such a heart and passion for adoption and foster care and children. But Adam grew up in Southeast Michigan, where he married his wife, Hanna, in September of 2014. Their oldest daughter, Wren, was adopted as an infant in 2018, followed by 2 biological sons. Brock is in 2020, and Ford in 2022. You've got to love the names of their kiddos. Adam and Hanna are currently foster parents and lead their church's foster and adoption ministry together, including the CarePortal, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. So please welcome to the show, Adam Southerland. Hey, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Sandra.
Oh, well, thank you for agreeing to be on. This month, we are honoring our foster adoptive dads. And you're a foster and adoptive dad, so that's an exciting thing. And I know you'll have some great things to share with us, but I'd love to start with your story. You and Hannah actually started your parenting journey by adopting your daughter, Ren, love her name, and all your kids. I was reading your intro and your kids' names, love them. But anyway, I digress. So would you share with us why you and Hannah chose to pursue adoption?
Yeah, so really adoption was one of the things that really drew Hannah and I to each other. Even when we started dating, we were kind of exploring beginning a relationship, and I was actually talking with her parents about my heart for adoption. Didn't know what that would look like. Just knew that at some point in the future I would love to adopt, and always assumed that might be international. And so they're like, I think they knew at that point I was kind of feeling things out for Hannah. They're like, "Oh, well, Hannah has a heart for adoption also," and so I kind of marked that down, and it really became just one of the many things that God used to bring us together. And so once we started dating and then got married, we always kind of were thought that it would be a part of the plan, but like many people, that'll be something later, later
Mhm.
in life once we have our own children and so on and so forth. But I like to kind of just ask questions to kind of see what kind of reaction I can get. And so I did that one day, and I don't even know if I was completely serious. I mean, maybe to some degree, but I said, Hannah, what if we chose to adopt first? What if we said we're going to sacrificially, willfully, maybe hold off on having biological children? We assumed we could have biological children, but we said, what if we choose adoption first? And she said, sure, why not? And so we began to pray about it. At that point, we had moved to Cedarville University, where I was a resident director, and we had got to place this in a great adoption community. A lot of families that had adopted. We had some good friends who had adopted and were in the adoption process, and so we could begin having conversations with them about that. And so, about a year into marriage, we said, let's begin exploring what that would look like. And so we started getting information, filling out paperwork, and we knew that once the process started, the costs, the fees started to really begin to build. And so we trusted that God would provide for it, but we wanted to kind of be as ready as we could be. So I remember it was I think it was maybe a Sunday night. We had the paperwork filled out, we were praying on our couch, and we were saying, God, we want to start this when you're ready. But we knew that once we sent that application fee, the timeline would start for the first, I don't know, $1,500 or $3,000 and so on. And so we said, Lord, just give us clarity of when to begin the process. And so we were praying on my couch, and literally I was going up. I would walk go around the dormitory, just hang out with guys. And I got up from the couch after praying about it, and under our door was an envelope that just said for the adoption, and it had $250 in it. And so I
Wow.
think the fee was like $200, and we had shared with some of our students. Many of them knew that we were in the process of praying about when to start, and we still don't know who slid the money under the door. It didn't have any name, but it just said for the adoption, and it was the amount. So we're like, okay, Lord, we'll start the process. And so started that process, and we knew adoption wasn't a quick process. We were doing a domestic infant private adoption out of Columbus, Ohio, or out of Ohio. So we're in that process for a couple years. Got matched with 7 moms in the process before we
Wow.
eventually were matched with our daughter. We actually were matched with a mom for about 5 months that lived about 20 minutes from us. Built a big, a good relationship with her. We're picking her up almost weekly to go to social service appointments, maybe going shopping. It was it was going to be a very open adoption, and loved her. We were actually in the hospital for the C-section when she gave birth to the baby, got to hold the baby. But a day into that process, she decided to parent. And
Mhm.
so we went through all of those emotions, and God was very gracious in the midst of that, helped us to pause in the middle of that moment, to pray with her, to pray for her, pray that God would give her everything that she needed, because in that moment we were hurting, and we're thinking we could give her all of these things. We could give this little boy all the things that he needs, but she had chose to parent. And so um, we got to keep up with her a little bit, but haven't had much contact. And then just 2 weeks later, we were matched with the bio mom for our daughter, who was due to have a baby 10 days later. And so my wife was praying boldly. That was right after Thanksgiving, that the first, we don't like to call it a failed match because it wasn't a failure. It was a very good thing. It just didn't end the way that we thought it was going to end, with a child in our home. But it definitely was never a failure. We got to love on a mom in a crisis pregnancy for 5 months. Um, and so my wife was praying, God, I don't know if we'll get it, but I would love to have a baby by Christmas, because that's what we were anticipating, was a baby for the holidays and to go through all of these things. And so our daughter was stubborn and didn't come until the 29th, but our daughter was born on December 29th. And so got to be there, the 2 a.m. call, drove over to the hospital in Columbus, got to meet our daughter, got to meet some of the biological family. Again, I could go into a long story of the openness with her family, but they had no idea until I think we actually knew that our daughter was being placed for adoption before her extended family and immediate family. So we got to meet them at the hospital and give them hugs and tell them that we love them, that we would love to have a relationship with them. And it was almost like scales fell off of their eyes when they heard that we wanted to have a relationship with them, and that we wanted to continue to let Ren, of course, she was going to know about her biological family. We're going to honor them. This isn't a shameful thing. This is something that is very loving. And so it was such a cool opportunity just to see them see that, oh, we're not going to be hidden. We're going to be talked about, spoken about, highly talked about. And so ever since she was born, we've had a very open relationship. It was one of the hard things about leaving Ohio to move to New York, was leaving that relationship that has been such a blessing to us and to our daughter. And so we've met up with them 2 or 3 times when we've gone back to visit family. And some of her aunts were at her birthday party this last year in Michigan when we were back home. And so that's a part of her adoption. We actually did a couple embryo adoptions also in 2015 and I'm trying to get my dates right. It would have been 2018 and 19. The first time we actually got pregnant and unfortunately miscarried. And then the second time we did it, a second, they call it frozen embryo transfer. We did a second one of those, and that time neither embryo was viable and continued into a child. And so at that point, we kind of said, let's press pause on everything, allow some time to process, to grieve, but also to allow Hannah's body to kind of recover from that process, as it's very strenuous on hers. And almost immediately, the Lord gave us our first biological son. We got pregnant almost immediately once we moved to New York. And then at that point, kind of said, okay, we'd love foster care to be a part of our journey. And long story short, I told my wife, I said, she was kind of saying, hey, I think I might like to have another biological son. I said, that's fine. I'm down for that. But I want to be certified as a foster parent before we get there, because I'm afraid if we won't, we may never become foster parents. And so we got certified, actually got a placement of a 3-year-old boy. And then shortly after that, also got pregnant with our second son. And so was fostering, was pregnant, had little ones, and just kind of trusted the Lord with all of it. And so that's some of our adoption journey, but also how we've got engaged with foster care also.
Gosh, so incredible. And I know one of the things that I just keep thinking about is, like, where did that come from, do you think, for both you and Hannah, when you were even just dating, that you both knew? Like, did you have adoption in your families? Like, where do you think that desire to do that came from?
Yeah, oddly enough, neither of our families had really engaged in adoption or foster care. I was a missionary for a couple years. God has blessed me with the opportunity to really travel all over the world, and I've got to see some orphanages. And really, again, I always thought that we would land, overseas, but God said, I'm going to send you to upstate New York instead. And again, we're still open to that, and He may still send us one day. But I always assumed that we would adopt from wherever country we were living as missionaries. That was kind of what I thought. I would live there. I would adopt a child if it was a possibility, and that's what we do. So that's kind of how I always thought it would. flesh out. Um, but really, Hannah just having a heart for children was always kind of
Mm.
just passionate about that. And then, of course, as I think the biggest thing for us as a couple was we often said we want our family to represent the kingdom. You
Mm.
know, God's can't, we enter God's family through adoption. We want that to be a part of our story, but also understanding that, again, it's not every case, but often, sometimes in adoption, you find, different races and ethnicities. And so we said, even with that, we want our family to look like the kingdom. And so if God chooses to give us a child of another race or ethnicity, we're very open to that because that's what God's family looks like. And so
Mm.
that's really the driving force, I think, for us together was as we were adopted into God's family, we want our family to look like that also. And so starting even with choosing, as God chose us, we wanted that child. And again, I don't want to speak to anybody else's story. Everybody has different reasons for why they engage and get
Mhm.
into adoption. But even from choosing adoption from the beginning, we wanted that child to very clearly know that you were chosen. It wasn't because maybe we couldn't have biological children. Well, that's a great reason also to have children. We said we want you to know that we loved you and that we chose you from the beginning. And so that's why we even
Mm.
chose to pursue adoption first, was to even send that child, that's message to our child. And so we can tell our daughter pretty clearly, like, we chose to adopt first, and you're the oldest. You get to lead the way as our first child, maybe not firstborn to us, but our first child. And so it's been a great kind of message to get to reinforce to her of how much we love her.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And how old is your daughter now? And really, what was that adjustment like? We know that adoption and foster care can be messy. Children come in with trauma, no matter how old they are when we adopt them or foster, right? So
Yeah.
have you experienced any of those challenges? How old is Ren now? Kind of give us an update on
Yeah.
how that all went.
Yeah. So she is 6 years old, and
Oh.
she is a leader. She is, uh, you know, she is very passionate about her things, and we love that about her. She's going to be a world changer. And so some of the, it's interesting. She has a biological brother, same mom and same dad, and they've spent hours together really
Mm.
over the last 6 years. But it was funny as we would go and get to spend time with them, their mannerisms, you're like, they've never spent time with each other, but they would have the same mannerisms, facial expressions, just all of those little things that were just really interesting, just kind of thinking, you would think those would be nurture things, but no, they're it's who they are. But we definitely, it was interesting. Again, we've always been very open with her story with her, and she would ask them questions even when she was probably 3, and Hannah would be like, Ren just asked me about her birth family, or she'd say something about, oh, what did she say? I can't remember, but she shared a story one time about, will I ever go back to my other family? And she was kind of wrestling with this identity of, okay, I know I was in mama's belly, the other mama's belly, my bio mom's belly, but I'm now here and just wrestling with some of those things, even as a young kid. And so just to help her process some of that, I wouldn't say we've had much of the trauma or the lack of like the identity. We've always been very much of, hey, we love you. You are a Southerland through and through, but God has also just given you more family. And
Mm.
so I think some of that openness, in the past, most adoptions were closed out of fear, and now it seems like the shift has been, if at all possible, shoot for openness because it does help with some of these things, and we've really benefited from that. She doesn't have to wonder about her mom. She has that relationship. She doesn't have to wonder about her aunts, her biological aunts or her grandparents. She knows them. She loves them. They make it special. They send her birthday cards.
Mm.
And it's always, I mean, whenever she gets something from her aunt, it's like always the best. And so we send videos. Again, just I understand not every situation can be that,
Yeah.
but we thank the Lord for a healthy, open relationship that we've been able to establish with her mom. But again, then you throw fostering into that, and you know it it's definitely been messy, but
Yeah.
we're grateful to be able to step into that mess with her family and to help everybody process. Every time we get to see her biological mom, we know that there's a lot of joy that comes with that, but we know that there's probably also a lot of
Mhm.
grief. And so just to see pictures on birthday, we always try to be very sensitive to that, of
Mhm.
not overwhelming her, because again, as grateful I think that she is that Ren is with us, I think there's also still a lot of grief that will always come with that. So we just try to respect that, honor that, not push anything, but let her know how grateful we are and how much we do love
Mhm.
her also. And it's been really good.
Oh, it's beautiful, beautiful story. So to pivot to the fostering, how many years have you guys been fostering?
I think we started that in 2000. It would have probably been 21. So we've been in it for about 2 to 3 years now. We got our first placement. It was funny. God really wanted us to welcome this little boy into our family, because we've now got a running joke with our agency that we're with. Every time I'm gone on a trip, they call us. And I'm not even exaggerating. I'm a missions pastor. I get to do 3 or 4 trips at least a year, and I think every time, either right before, while I'm on, they've called us saying, "Hey, would you be able to welcome a couple kids into your family?" And we're like, "Well, Adam's about to be gone, or Adam's not here." Even one time Hannah went to Michigan, they called us about a placement, and I'm like, again, our hearts to want to say yes, but we got to think of the reality of, is this even best for the kid? And so the first call we got about this little boy, I was actually in the Dominican Republic, and Hannah was, I could communicate with her, and we're like, okay, doesn't seem like it's the best timing. There were even some needs there that we weren't quite sure if we were ready or equipped to give him the best that he might need. And so we said, now's probably not the best timing with Adam out of town. And then about a month later, the boy needed to be moved. And so we prayed about it and said, apparently God might really want this little boy to be with us. And so we were able to say yes. And so he came into our home at the age of 3, um,
Mm.
uh, kind of nonverbal, but not at the same time, just wasn't able to communicate as clearly as he would wanted. But um, he came in, and so at that point, our daughter was 4, and our son was 2, maybe not quite 2 yet. And so this boy
Wow.
was in between them, and really functioning probably closer to my son's age. Um, and so we really just got to love on him, and we had him for about 11 months in our home, and really got to the point, you know, in my mind, and we still even wrestle with this as a couple, I always assumed if there was a child in our home that was going to probably need to be adopted, of course, we're a yes family. We say yes. But God humbled me pretty quickly in the process. Adam, you're not everybody's savior. You can't do everything, and you're not best for every situation. And so we really began to pray and consider, um, are we the best family for this little boy with some of the needs that he has? Having at that, later in that, we then had 3 under the age of 5 in our home once our youngest son was born. And as much as, again, we loved him and he loved being in our home, we couldn't necessarily give him all that he needed with some of the challenges that he had. And so we really began praying through and wrestling through, should we, disrupt is such a hard word, but it's the reality. Should we disrupt the placement, and maybe begin encouraging the agency to find another family? And so we eventually did that. We said, guys, no hurry. We don't want this to be rushed. We don't want to be quick. We want to be the right family. And so we began praying about another family to potentially move him to. And for me personally, I really struggled with the idea of, he was placed in a Christian home. And so he
Mm.
was going to get to hear the gospel, and to potentially move him to a home that weren't Christians was really hard for me. And really, this was probably the first time that Hannah and I were ever not on the same page. Through all the adoption, through all the foster care, we were always step in step, but we were really struggling with, what do we do with this little boy that we both love? And so it was a really challenging season, even for our marriage. A lot of really hard conversations. Probably, talk about the mess. It was very
Mm.
messy, even for us, as we kind of processed, okay, we're not approaching this from the same angle. What do we do? How do we get to meet each other in the middle, and do what's best for our family, for our marriage, but also for this little boy. And so in all of that, it was probably a 3 month span from when we began to really think, okay, we're maybe not the long-term solution for this boy. Um, the guy was preparing another family, and they were just getting involved in the process and getting certified. And right when we were like, okay, we're about to go to Michigan, if we can move him, this would probably be the best time. And we had already began to do some visits with this family. He would go do weekends and some days with them, and they were just getting certified about that time, and they were a believing family. They were involved
Mm.
in a local church, very like-minded, and so God really answered all the prayers that we had for this little boy, and we still get to see him regularly. We have him over, if they need help or respite or weekends. Uh, we get to play the aunt and uncle role, and our kids love him. Our 2-year-old, I mean, from his earliest memories, um, we will call him D. D was always around for his memories, and so if we're praying for our family, he'll say, "Daddy, don't forget about D." That's his best
Mm.
buddy. That was his partner in crime for a year, and so even to see our kids get to understand a little bit about foster care, and our daughter's now older, and so even when we say yes to placements now, we kind of, okay, Ren, this is what we're thinking. What do you think about that? Like, are you willing to maybe sacrifice some of mom and dad's attention or some of your
Mhm.
toys to welcome some of these kids into our home? And so it's been a real positive, but as we often like to say, it's very, very messy. And even though it's been a blessing, it's been a gift to get to love on him. He will always be a very messy part of my story. Always. The emotions of wanting to have been that long-term option, but unfortunately we weren't. And so every time he comes over, every time he's in our home, those emotions get stirred up again of, Lord, did we make the right choice? But we have to look back and trust him that yes, that was the right thing for him. And even though in those moments it may be challenging, we can trust that we did what was best by him and even for our family, even though it's messy and it will always
Yeah.
be a messy part of our story.
Yeah. Would you say that's been the hardest part of being a foster parent, that particular story, or was there anything else that you found to be even more challenging?
Yeah, I mean, knowing when to say yes and no is always a big part of that challenge. As
Mhm.
much as we want to say yes, we live a very active ministry filled life. We know that even with this current placement that we took about 2 weeks ago of a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old, there's never going to be a perfect time. It's never going to be slow. We're never going to not be things, never going to not have things that are going to have to be interrupted. Social events are going to change. Our weekends going to change. Our day schedules are going to be changed. So every time we say yes, we know that, saying yes to being a foster parent is saying yes to being interrupted. And so that's a big thing that we really try to share with our people here at our church of, it's not going to ever be the right time to say yes to placement. And so we try to live that out. So that's always a challenging part. And,
Mhm.
having now had a placement, that's been challenging is really probably the biggest challenge was having to kind of come to the understanding that we may not be the right fit. And then
Mhm.
again, learning a lot about my wife and I in that
Mhm.
process of how to go through maybe conflict or how to go through disagreement. And we didn't always handle it well, honestly. I mean, I'm a pastor, but I'm a normal guy who struggles with sin. And I was probably struggling with some sin and pride in that whole situation, and maybe not always leading my family as well as I would have liked. And so that was really hard, seeing some of that. But again, looking back, seeing the good that God has brought out of that, and
Mhm.
then even seeing how to serve my wife in the midst of all of those um, hard circumstances. Because as much as I'm involved, very active, of course, I'm not a passive part of fostering. My wife is still, in some ways, leading in that way, being at
Mhm.
home with the children when a couple are in school now, but at that time they were all home all the time. And so when we say yes, that's putting a lot on her plate as someone who's also, on the board of trustees of a pregnancy center and active in our church. And so it just takes a lot when we say yes, but being willing to say, as important as those things are, we are going to be interruptible for the
Mhm.
sake of some kids who need a family to say yes to them. And so, um, but yeah, that situation was probably been some of the most challenging that we've gone through, for sure.
Wow. What has been, do you think, the most rewarding part of being a foster parent?
Whew, it's a lot of really good things I got. As much as we want to love children, I often say this about missions and mission trips. We go wanting to serve, but yet God does a major work in your life
Mm.
as you're doing that, and you come back different. And so, both in adoption and in foster care, just perspective, for so many people, whether you're, again, if you're going, why do I love people going on mission trips? It gets them out of their bubble. It gets them,
Mhm.
hopefully, even out of the United States to see, oh, things are different around the world. Um, it's you get to be maybe a minority people. I'm an American in a Dominican context. I don't speak the local language. I have maybe the different color skin. I am the other. It's so good for our people to see that in missions. But then as you enter into foster care and adoption, you get to see what people are going through. It makes you more compassionate. The one
Mhm.
mom that we were matched with for 5 months, I had never been to a social services meeting to talk about how to get resources or to see how do you get low income housing. Thankfully we've not had to go through that, but I now have a compassionate heart for someone who does have that. You
Mhm.
know, for a mom who loves her child but maybe doesn't have the capacity to do everything to parent that child through either adoption or foster care. I'm now compassionate for them. It breaks my heart. It's able to say, hey, I'm willing to do all I can to help you hopefully be reunified with their child. Now, there's some cases where that's not possible because of TPR already happening and reunification is not possible, but keeping the goal in foster care. The goal is to help this parent, help this mom, help this dad do all they can to get their child back into their care. And that's a hard thing. It's vulnerable because, you've heard this, I'm sure, a million times. How do you love a kid but have to let them go?
Mhm.
It's not easy, but I want to think that I have, with God's help, the capacity to do that. But that's a sacrificial thing to do, to say I'm willing to love and to let go because that kid needs a family to love them, give them stability in the
Mhm.
midst of all that. So really perspective is one of the best things that God has given us in the process, is to be able to see people differently, to see their circumstances differently, to be able to say, sometimes you'll hear, well, if they just worked harder, if they just went back to school, that's like telling some families, go hit the jackpot. They've never
Mhm.
seen that. They've never experienced that. And so stepping into some of these situations has really helped change our perspective and make us much more compassionate towards towards those families that are going through that. To see our family, our children, uh, love on other kids. I was just talking with our daughter the other day and said, Ren, have you enjoyed getting to love on our two new friends that are in our home with us right now? And she's like, yeah, it's a good thing. She's not been bitter towards the process. She's been very open to that,
Mhm.
and knowing, she'll say she doesn't always know the best way to communicate things. She doesn't always have good adoption language or foster care language. So she'll say, Dad, she'll even ask him, like, how long are they going to be here? She's not meaning that from the negative of like,
Right.
are they going home soon? It's no, she'll say, I really I'm enjoying them being here with us. Like, she's trying to prepare her heart. Like, are they
Mhm.
leaving soon?
Yeah.
Because I need to know in my heart how, we've done respite for weekends, and those are always, emotional weekends because she loves these kids and they go home after 2 or 3 days. And so to see her heart grow for them. And really,
Mhm.
the last thing is getting, probably one of the other positives is allowing God to use our story to encourage others to take steps forward. When we were going through our adoption process with Ren, we were having 200 guys live with us. I lived in a residence hall with 200 guys, college students at a time, and we were very transparent. We were open. They walked with us, my RAs in particular. They were with us in the good and the bad and the tears and the joy. I mean, they were some of the first people that got to meet our daughter when we brought her home.
Mhm.
They were there with us, but they also cried with us when our other match didn't follow through. And so to get to pass on that vision, that enthusiasm with probably over 750, 800 students over that 4 year period that we lived in that dorm. And already one of them has already adopted
Wow.
a child after walking through that journey with us. And they've shared with us that we were a big part of that story. We've had others that have got certified or have been in the foster process or adoption process. And so to see that and then to be able to multiply that even in our local church, to see a church culture grow towards a heart of adoption and foster care. Not that we're anything special, but God's just used our story and we share our story. And you opened earlier about our family. I don't think it's totally not all on us, but no one in our family had adopted or fostered when we started the adoption process of our daughter. But since then, my sister has adopted out of foster care. My brother has two little boys that they've been fostering for a couple years.
Wow.
That's likely going to end up in adoption. And our family pictures look much different than they looked 6 years ago, and we're really grateful for that. And now we can all understand one another better. And so again, not to say that we got us there, but our willingness to say yes to adoption did something in our family to give, to expand the dynamics of our family. And so we have adoption and foster care all throughout my family, and we're really grateful to see how it's literally changed our not just immediate family, but our extended family also in the process.
Oh, I love that. What an incredible story of impact. When we put our yes on the table, how God can multiply that when we're obedient. Love that. So in addition to all that you're doing as parents, foster and adopted parents, you also lead the adoption and foster care ministry at your church. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, when we moved to New York in 2019, we were already engaging again in the adoption world, but we weren't as engaging in foster care at that point. But we knew that in my role that there was going to be some opportunity for that. And so my wife had already been involved in a pregnancy center there in Ohio. And so, we were doing some different things, but we definitely knew that growing a foster and adoption ministry would be a high priority of ours. And so and what was really cool is we didn't know this at the time being, but when we moved to New Hope, his role was different from mine, but when he stepped out of the role and they adapted the role and brought me on, he and his wife were very active in foster care in our county already. So we often say that they were the foundation. They set the stage. Our church people got to watch their lives, some of that perspective that I was just talking about. Our people walked with them through their fostering journey, through their adoption journey of those girls, and really set the stage for all that God has allowed us to do now. And so we started just with, hey, let's start with an Orphan Sunday. We don't know what it's going to build to, but let's just start building awareness for what God is doing in the orphan crisis. And then, so we did that the first year. We just started with a Q&A of our family. Hey, we've adopted. Come ask us questions. And we had a couple people, and it's funny looking back now, there were 3 couples that came to that first Q&A. One of them has adopted kinship care out of foster care. Another family is now certified as respite with foster care, and the other family is in the process of adopting a child from India. In the next, they'll hopefully be receiving children that they might get matched with here soon. So it's kind of cool looking back 5 years ago about how all of those families have taken steps forward. So we started with an Orphan Sunday awareness. Then the next year we started inviting agencies into our church saying, hey, we need a healthy relationship with the county, with the foster agency. So we said, hey, this is what we're doing. We'd love to have you come, interact with our people, start getting them signed up for orientation or learning more. So we began that cycle. And then some of and that really kickstarted it. We had 1 or 2 families get engaged in fostering, get certified. And then the next year we had a couple more, and then we've had a couple more. So
Wow.
we've probably got, 7 to 10 families certified, either to be foster parents, or they're thinking maybe, hey, we want to be a part of the respite solution for our community and for our county. And so it's been really cool to see that because it's built a ton of trust with our foster agencies. We don't, again, there are children who need to be adopted that are in foster care. That's not most of them. And so I think one thing that's built a lot of trust with our agencies is we say the goal of foster care is unification. We start there.
That's
And
right.
so we don't start at adoption, we start at reunification. And so our agencies have really been grateful for that because they can trust us. They can trust our people. And we've built that. We do a ministry called New Hope Foster Response. It's a ministry that if they will fill out a form, we try to, within 24-ish hours, bring necessity items. When a placement happens, you think, okay, I need a crib, I need a pack and play, I need diapers, I need wipes, I need clothing. I don't have anything. What am I going to do with all that? How am I going to get everything? I've got agencies, I got to schedule doctor's appointments. So we try to say we can't do everything, but we want to take some of that off their plate. If we can just get them 4 or 5 days into it, that's a win. So we pack a backpack with necessity items, depending on age dependence. So that could be diapers, it could be wipes, it could be pajamas, underwear, depending on the age, hair care products, a stuffed animal, a coloring book. We just kind of pack it with some necessity items in a bag. And then we say, not only that, but we want those families to be able to bond as much as possible, and not have to worry about a meal. So we'll either give them a frozen meal that someone has prepared, or we'll provide them with a DoorDash gift card or something, depending on dietary needs or the size of the family. Maybe if they're a size of 8, we don't always have a meal for the family the size of 8. So we say, hey, order a meal. It's on us. Get pizza, whatever it is. We just want to take some of that off of their plate. And so we've been doing that for about 2 years as a church, and it's been awesome. Connecting with families, being able to say, hey, we no strings attached. We're just thankful that you said yes to loving on these children in the midst of their crisis moments and in the midst of their challenges. And so we've probably did, I don't know, probably 50 or 60 deliveries over the last 2.5 years with that ministry. So that's been awesome. So we do that. We're engaged with, we do a foster parent night out. That's really probably what kicked off even more of this than even Foster Response was, hey, what's something that we can begin to do to offer foster families in our community to build a bridge? But more than anything, we tell our agencies, we love Jesus and we're not ashamed of that. We are who we are, but we are sincere about also wanting to support your families. So we do usually once every 3 or 4 months, we do a foster parent night out. It's a weeknight, maybe Friday night, or depending on what's going on, maybe during the week. We say you've got from 5 to 9. Drop your kids off, pick them up anytime before 9, please come back and get them. But we say you can go do whatever you want. If you want to do a date night, if you're a couple, go out on a date. If you just want to go grocery shopping without kids, go do that. If you want to go home and take a nap, whatever you want to do, you've got 4 hours, go do whatever you want. And so we do a trauma-informed training that one of our agencies put that together. And so we have all of our volunteers do background checks and watch a training video that we recorded a couple years back, just to kind of, hey, we don't know where these kids are coming from. You may think, they're being bad, but they may just be responding to being away from their foster family or being around other kids, and triggers may be happening. So we try to, everyone goes through that training just so we can give those kids our best possible. So it's kind of like a mini vacation Bible school. We do a craft, we have snack, we do pizza, we try to do a bounce house if we can get that, or something else special. And we just love on the kids. They have a great time. And we give the parents a 4-hour break, and I often tell our volunteers, I said, if you're tired after 4 hours, praise the Lord, because you now know the gift that you just gave those families by taking that off of their plate for a couple hours. And so we'll usually have 14 to 15 different families come and be a part of that, around 30 kids coming. And so we invite biological kids along with the foster placements, adoptive, if the kids have been adopted. We just want to say, hey, whatever you need to have an empty house so you can go do whatever you need to do. So those are kind of the big 3. And then I guess the last one is we've started a foster support group that meets once a month on Friday, usually the last Friday of every month. And it's not a faith-based one. We meet at our church, but again, it's just a space for families to connect with other foster parents to say, hey, we get it. It's hard. There's no judgment here. What's going on? Share some of your story with people who get it. And we don't often have answers, but we often say, we're sorry, but we're glad that you're still in the midst of it, saying yes, even though it's very hard. So we've been doing that for a little over a year now. And so that's been another blessing. So we do our support group, our foster parent night out, and our foster response, along with just encouraging families to get involved in foster care. It's been really cool. With Hannah and I recently taking a placement, often we're, getting people to care, to serve. Hey, let's do some meals for this family. They just took a placement. But when you get to be the recipient of that care, it's it's really special. And I mean, my wife's made a couple posts on Facebook. The church has showed out for our family. I mean, we often say all of our families in Michigan, extended family, and we told our lead pastor when we moved here, we can't be what we need to be if the church is not going to be the family, our family for us.
Mhm.
And especially in foster care, it is, I often say it is almost impossible to foster without a support community.
That's
And
right.
especially when we take in two kids along with our three, we couldn't have said yes if we didn't know we had a church that would support us. And that's a step of faith for us. We're trusting our church is going to, and praise the Lord, they have. We've had meals, we've had care packages, we've had people come over just to help at bedtime. Our church family has come through so much for us,
Mm.
and we know that we're not expecting meals for the next however long, but it's helped us establish some really solid connections to be able to, at least think, okay, we think we can do this long term. Maybe we're naive, but they've helped us be able to really consider that. And we only assume that they're going to continue to show up for us. And so it's been really a blessing to be a recipient of the support and care we've tried to instill for others in our community. It's been just, I mean, we can't thank the Lord enough for that.
Yeah, well, I have to say that New Hope is just such a special place. We live in the same, pretty much the same region of upstate New York, and I've been leading JFO for 14 years, established it. And in all of this time, because I've spoken in a lot of churches, reached out to a lot of churches, tried to get churches to do Orphan Sunday, back when it was called
Mm,
that. I have to say, New Hope Community Church, such an encouragement. I got to be at your
mm,
church last fall, and um, unfortunately, it's you guys are few and far between in the
mm,
churches in our region who really embrace and understand James 1:27 and care and say yes and step into this space. So I thank you and everybody at New Hope, because if only every church, you know, had a
yeah,
heart, had a heart like that. In addition to all of that, everything that you just mentioned, you guys are also doing CarePortal now.
yeah.
So would you share a little bit about what that experience has been?
Yeah, we got to have you at our we don't call it Orphan Weekend anymore. We've
Right.
adapted that because we realized we're doing much more than just orphan care.
Yeah.
The kids in foster care, they're not orphans. Many of them have families that love them, that would love to parent them. They're just not able. So we've adapted that. We call it, we know there's a Safe Families, but we call it Safe Families, and it's an acronym for supporting, adopting, fostering, and equipping families. And so that's kind of we don't use the acronym enough because people are like, what do you mean by that? So we just often say foster and adoption ministry, but we have that an acronym for that special weekend. And so, yeah, last year we got to have you join us and share about CarePortal. And it's been such just another encouragement. We've been able to utilize it for some of our foster and adoption ministry as families within our church family have got placements. We've been able to go in and say, hey, could we get some frozen meals? We've given out all the meals that we've had. Can we get some? And we've had women's groups bring frozen meals. We've said, hey, our foster closet is running low on some different items. We'll put a list there, and we've had ladies bring backpacks or different sizes that we've maybe are low on, and meet those. So it's been really encouraging, even from our ministry side, to be able to use that church
Mhm.
needs tab and to really utilize that in some different ways. But then we've also had the blessing to respond to some of those community needs. We were doing some of this, it was just a lot more complicated because of the trust that we had built with our counties, with some of the different agencies. They were already reaching out to us saying, hey, we've got a family in need. Could you provide a baby gate? Could you provide diapers or something like that? We do meals or food bins for families over Christmas break to help. A
Mm.
lot of low income families really rely on the schools for their meals.
Yeah.
So we adapted from doing a Thanksgiving meal to food bins over Christmas. And so we were already doing some of these things, but it's streamlined that where they can say, hey, they've already vetted the need, they know they need it. And we just get to say, yeah, we can do that. We can't always meet it. And so it's been cool to see there's times where I've really wrestled over, oh, I want to say yes, I want to meet the need. And so I'll be praying about it, thinking about, okay, is there a family I could reach out to maybe meet this need? And by the time I go there to meet it, another church in our community has already met that need. So I can just say, okay, Lord, praise the Lord. It's not just up to New Hope. We're not on an island to see the body of Christ. across denominational lines. Meeting needs has been really encouraging. I can share one cool story. So it was probably 2 months ago. We took a few beds to a mom in our community. And so we had taken those, we had delivered those. A couple of our men, passion for Christ, they shared with me later, hey, we met with this couple, they weren't married. We actually got to share Christ with both of them. They both made professions of Christ that day.
Wow.
And so again, you never know. You say, we'll see what's going to happen, but they made a profession of Christ. And the biggest thing we're finding is that families want to come to church. They just can't
Mhm.
get to church. And so we're in the process of praying, okay, Lord, how do we develop a transportation ministry?
Yeah.
Heaven forbid people want to come to church and they can't get there. That can't be. We've got to figure that out. And so we said, let's figure out something for this family. So the man and woman and their 2 kids, we get them to church that weekend. They start making some connections. Unfortunately, something happened with the gentleman. He's not able to be in the picture anymore. But that mom has continued to reach out. She's continued to come to church. She's seen the value and love that a local church can provide to her,
Mhm.
the support that she's needed. So we've been able to not just deliver a couple beds, we've now helped her move into a different space. We've helped them with transporting all that stuff. She's been engaged in coming to weekend services. She's got a support system of people that she knows loves her. She is currently away in a different, a couple hours away at a program, just getting some other resources and help that she needs. But she's been texting us, responding and saying, hey, is there a way that I can watch the services online? I want to stay
Wow.
connected. And she's been watching those. She shot me a message just earlier this week saying, hey, just want to give you an update. Things are going well. I got to recently see the kids. They're with their dad. Got to see their dad, got to see the kids. It's all been really good. Just wanted to keep you connected. And so
Yeah.
I'm able to say, hey, thank you for staying in contact. We've got some moms that are ready when she's able to get back in the area just to meet with her, to do some discipleship.
Mm.
It's a long road. It's messy. I'm
Yeah.
I mean, if a church really wants to get involved in these things, I've been working with our care pastor on some different things. If you're really going to engage foster care, if you're really going to engage CarePortal, preventative services, CPS cases through these ways, it's going to get messy. It
Yeah.
is 100%. You're going to be stepping into some situations and say, wow,
Mm.
even as adults, we're blushing a little bit. This is hard, not just in the messy, but even sometimes I'll tell our gentlemen, I say, hey, when you're going, just do some reconnaissance, look around. Are there other needs that we could meet? Do they need this? Or do they need that? And often they've come back and say, Adam, it's easier to tell you what they have than what they don't have because they
Mm.
need so many things. And
Yeah.
so it's broke their hearts. One of the guys, he was a former foster dad, adopted through foster care. His children are older. It got a little bit messy. And he's like, Adam, it's been great it's helped remind me. It's
Mm.
it's it's broken my heart again for this. And he's recently retired and he's now my main bed guy. Whenever I need beds
Wow.
delivered, I give him a call and say, hey, I've got a job. And he's like, Adam, it's actually given me some purpose in retirement. It's helped
Mm.
me to see some ways that, I'm not just looking to do this or that. I'm able to give to the Lord and to the church. And so he's kind of become my bed guy with a couple other guys in our church. But I say, don't do it all by yourself. Train up a guy, let him do
Yeah.
one, then let him do the next one. So
Yeah.
even today, they were doing a air conditioner installation for us. And so it's been cool to see God provide, just some follow-up opportunities, some opportunities for us to get some of them to church and just again to see who knows what the stories, but all because of a bed or a couple beds. We're
Mhm.
trusting that God is in the process of completely transforming a
Yeah.
family's life by the power of the gospel and hopefully seeing some
Yeah.
generational change because the stats, a family where a kid is either involved with the county services or foster care, the likelihood of that happening again are just so high. So we're
Yeah.
doing our best just to engage that and see what the Lord does with it. As much as we're glad to step into it, but it's really the Lord that's doing all the work, and we're just trying to say it's messy, but we're going to engage it. It's going to be hard. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be hard to say no because sometimes even your people say, "Why aren't we doing more?"
Mhm.
Okay, we
Mhm.
understand. We're grateful that your heart is to do more, but how do we help without enabling? How do we help without
Mhm.
hurting? How do we do it from a healthy perspective and to be able to to tell our people, hey, they're engaged with the county. The county can help vet some of these things. So if they have other needs, encourage them. Go to the social worker, let them know if there's more needs. And if there really needs, they're going to come back to us and say, hey, here's some more ways that you can serve. So it allows us to minister, it allows us to help, it allows us to share Christ, but we don't have to own all of the responsibility of yes and no, which
Yeah.
is a big freedom for a lot of our people. So CarePortal has been a great bridge to meeting more people, engaging them in some different ways, and people who that need the help, they want the
Yeah.
help, and we get, it's helping connect some of those dots.
Love that. And thank you so much for all that you guys are doing at New Hope, because we're grateful to have you part of our CarePortal network for sure. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. So before we wrap up, couple more questions here.
Yeah.
You chose the verse that I opened the show with, Isaiah 26:3. You keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on you because he trusts in you. What does that verse mean to you?
Yeah. The waves of life come, and there are storms, and Christ tells us in other passages that he's overcome the world. And so life may be chaotic, life may be crazy, but if I can keep my mind on the Lord, if I can trust him, now that's easier said than done at times, because there's been multiple times I'm like, are you sure, Lord? Are you sure? Are you listening? But he really has given us peace about a lot of challenging things. Again, it's not always been on our time frame, but I know if I can keep my eyes on the Lord, if I can trust in him, that even in the midst of these hard and challenging moments, that I can have peace in the midst of that. Because as much as we love these children, as much as we love our community, it's a great reminder to know that God loves them more than I do. God loves my own children more than I do. He loves my wife more than I do. And so if I can trust him, I can have peace that even if I don't understand, that God is truly working these things out for the good. So I can have peace and trust him in the midst of those moments.
Love that. Thank you. Okay, so since we are focusing this month on our adoptive and foster dads, and of course,
Yeah.
you are a foster and adoptive dad, would you leave us with some encouragement, some words of encouragement for the dads who are listening?
Yeah. First of all, it's okay to mess up. It's okay to fail. I think when we stepped into the fostering journey, we would say we're informed. We are listening to the podcast. We're trauma informed. We've been to the conferences. We know what we're doing. And then you start fostering and you get punched in the face. And you're like, I thought marriage was hard, and then I had kids. I thought parenting was hard, and then I started fostering. And it's just very challenging. And so it's okay to be like, me and my wife have often said, okay, we're learning. The enemy wants to bring guilt and shame on you, but it's okay to say, okay, we may have messed up, but Lord, forgive me. I need to confess that sin, but then trust the Lord to really bring that healing and then to move forward. It is easy to mess up in fostering and in adoption, but trusting again your motivations, if they are pure, if they are right, that God is with you in that. And it's not meant to be burdensome. It's not meant to be shaming or guilt. I mean, I remember there was a season, even when we were doing our adoption, there's almost sometimes a negative connotation with adoption and I refused. I said, Lord, you know our heart in this. Our daughter was meant for us. I will not let the enemy bring shame on us for doing what we know God led us to do and it being a good thing. And so, dads, when it's hard, when you mess up, give it to the Lord, seek forgiveness, turn from that, and then trust that healing work in his life, because I am not on this podcast today as a perfect husband, dad, or foster parent. We have made many mistakes in the process, but even in that, God has been good. I think of our foster son that we had for that 11 months. Even with my failures, I am on sight. He doesn't see the scars. He doesn't see the screw ups. Yeah, he experienced some of those, but in his eyes, I am still beautiful. And so as you step into this work, as you love on these children, even with your warts, your bumps, your bruises, you are still going to be seen as beautiful in the eyes of the children that you're choosing to love. So rest in that, pursue that. And no, even if the world calls you crazy, the Lord sees it as good, because that'll happen. Your family, as much as they are with you, they often won't get it. Your church, even as much as they are with you, they won't always get it, but the Lord does get it. And so trust that calling that he's placed on your life, pursue hard off after that. And thank you Thank you for saying willing to say yes to some of the hardest ministry there is. The work you're doing is vital. It's so important. And it's not just a job for the moms. Dads, you are called to help with the dishes. You're called to help with putting kids to bed at night, to carry them up, to spend the time, to get involved in that. So step into that with them. As big as a gift as our moms are, these kids need engaged dads, foster dads, adoptive dads, engaging dads. So jump in there with your wife. I'm trusting many of you are. If you're listening to a podcast like this, you probably already are, but keep going, keep running hard after the Lord. And as you do that, He will continue to bless you, even if it's challenging in the moment.
Love that. Thank you so much. And thank you for all that you and Hanna are doing, fostering, adopting, leading the ministry at your church, doing the CarePortal and all of it, because it's so incredible and it's so necessary. You know, it can be so isolating.
Mm-hmm.
Families say yes, but then they need that support. So I'm grateful for
sure.
all that you're doing. And thank you for being on the show today.
Again, it's a pleasure to get to be on here with Sandra. Thanks for all the work that you're doing to raise awareness in our region. Again, New Hope couldn't even do what we're doing without a lot of the work that you're doing. And so we need more people, banging that drum of foster care and adoption in our churches. Again, we get it, but it's still a big yes for a lot of churches. And so, but that's another podcast we can have to talk about some of that stuff.
Definitely. Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Angel.
Wasn't that a fabulous call with Pastor Adam Southerland? I hope that you were inspired and encouraged by my conversation with him. Thank you for listening to the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast. Remember, we are here to encourage and equip you for your unique parenting journey. I'm a mom of 2 young adults with FAS and a facilitator of the Facets Neurobehavioral Model. I know how difficult this journey can be, how isolating it can be, and I'm passionate about providing you with the resources that you need to just stay the course on your parenting journey, and especially those FASD resources for us. So make sure you check those out on our website, the coaching, the support group, the trainings and workshops. You can check it all out at our website, justicefororphans.ny.org/FASD. We've included a link to our website in the show notes. Be sure to find and follow us on your social media. Justice for Orphans has both a Facebook, Instagram, and also a LinkedIn page, actually. And I myself, Sandra Flack, are on all of those platforms, and I would love to connect with you there. Again, so grateful that you joined us today and grateful to have you along for the journey.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Adoption and Foster Care Journey podcast, brought to you by Justice for Orphans. We hope you were encouraged today. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review, and share it with your fellow foster and adoptive parent friends so they can be encouraged too. Be sure to find and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Justice for Orphans, and check out our website for vital resources at justicefororphansny.org.